Today with a discussion on First Chronicles. Looking at First Chronicles 21, and we're going to be talking about King David and this other census that is taken. I just looked at these numbers yesterday, so the first time looking at Chronicles here was yesterday, and I stumbled upon something that I want to share. But David is taking a different census, we're told in chapter 21. He enlists this Joab to help him with this. And he comes back and they come with these big round numbers. So 1.1 million for all of Israel, with Judah representing 470,000 is what we're getting here. So of course this is a problem, and then David interestingly goes to the seer is Gad right here. So it's interesting to understand the numbers. He goes through Gad, and that's what we see in the first census. That's sort of the key to help us down the path of understanding these numbers. But you'll see here that you get 70,000 that get taken back, and it's and there fell of Israel 70,000 men. So you're getting another round number. These are all rounded off to the thousands place. We'll note that in the giving of the numbers accounts, if we go back and review these, we'll note that these are given. Remember, Gad's number is down to the 50 to tens place. So instead of being rounded off to the thousands, not hundreds but tens place for Gad. So just a review of how we got to this, finding this Levi number 2250, because there were a few different ways that we could try. We could have tried to find the quarter of Israel as being, we ended up with the man, but you could have tried it with the lion. That would have put Levi's number way up over 100,000. The ox would have been under your given limit of 603,550. So you settle on the man grouping. You could go with eagle, and that puts Levi at, I want to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000. But you kind of want to stick with, it makes more sense to go with this man figure because of the factorization. So we'll see that both of these groups, if we were to take both of these groups right here, we see that they share a common factor of 233. So if we divide these numbers by 233, we'll see that it goes in 800 times there and 650 times into the grouping here. Of course, since we adjust and find this number for Levi, 2250, that means the remainder of Israel, since 605,800 is our total, and we see that this is 2,600 times 233. We see that the balance, the remainder of these two, has to be the sum of these two right here, the difference from 2,600. So we see the sum of these two is 1,450. The difference from 2,600 would be 1,150. So we know that the sum of the ox group plus the eagle plus Levi is going to be equal to this number right here, 267,950. So this base group, and this 233 number being the Fibonacci number, and relative to Etz HaHaim in Gematria, the tree of the lives, and also the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is 932, which would be 233 times 4. So we see all of this relevance to 233 being a Fibonacci number, all these different things that lead us down to thinking that we should be settling on this quarter piece finding 2250. And there are several things that we find later on down the road regarding 2250 that can sort of confirm this idea for us, that we're on the right track. But one thing I stumble on in Chronicles here is going to be this other giving of the numbers. So we're going to see that we also get a count in 1 Chronicles 12 earlier on here. And we're given these numbers again. Now, we need to pay attention to some of the terms, because we're going to see, for instance, so as it's mentioned here, Rashi Ha Elephim, heads of the thousands. So this isn't the first time that we see use of this term, where heads relating to heads of thousands. So we want to distinguish between these terms, the heads of thousands, and then we also have chiefs, this sharim term right here. So when we get into the giving of the numbers, we're going to see that all of these that come in support of King David here, again, we're going to get terms. So Judah, we see 6,800, and there's going to be terms associated with Judah, such as sons of Judah, sons of Simeon at 7,100, sons of the Levites, 4,600. And we see with the Levites, we're given more numbers here because we're given a subset of the Levites. So of the 4,600 of the Levites, we see Aaron as 3,700. And then a further subset, we have Zadok, father of him, chiefs, so this Sharim term of 22. We go further on, sons of Benjamin, 3,000. Sons of Ephraim, 20,800. Half stock of Manasseh, so we're not talking about sons of anymore. With Manasseh, just half stock, and you can see that there's another half stock of Manasseh grouped with Reuben and Gad later on at 120,000. And then we have Issachar, sons of Issachar. There's no term here, but we're given heads of them, 200. So we're given the Rashi term here, just stating 200, but not giving an actual number. When we look at Zebulun, again, we're not from sons of, it's just from Zebulun, from Naphtali. Zebulun, 50,000. Naphtali, chiefs, says chiefs thousands, and with them in shield and spear 37,000. So we're getting a term here of Sharim 1,000, and then given a number with it of 37,000. So this could be signaling a number for the actual chiefs. So if this is 37,000 with 1,000 chiefs, that would mean 37 soldiers with a chief. So we'll look at that. The Danites being 28,600. Asher, 40,000. And then we have the grouping of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh at 120,000. So what to do with these numbers? Well, again, we're going to look at these values as we had with our other. So this is our first census here, our first census numbers that we were focusing on. If we're going to come over here and compare these to what these values that we just got here from Chronicles, Judah 6,800, Zebulun 50,000, Reuben 120,000, Simeon 7,100, Levi 4,600, Ephraim 20,800, so on and so forth all the way down here. Now Levi had a subset of 3,700, Aaron had 22 chiefs. Now remember, there were 1,000 chiefs with Naphtali, with a total of 37,000. So this should tell you that you have 37 chiefs total, or 37 soldiers per chief for Naphtali. So this would tell you that you should multiply these two. So for Zadok right here, 22 chiefs should be 22 times 37, and that'll give you 814. So where do we see 814? Well, we see that that's a multiple. It's a factor, a divisor of 4070. 4070 happens to be the number that Levi adjusts to in the second census. So the first census, we calculate him at 2250. That's the contingent that would have had to march out to complete the circle for the quarter piece. And then he would have to adjust to 4070 in the second census when that total becomes 601,730. So that number aligns. You do have a correlation there with those numbers. It's kind of interesting with the 37 value here again. And again, that subset, I think it's trying to show you that these chiefs are a subset of Aaron right here with Zadok. So that's one thing. Now the other thing is Issachar. So heads were 200, but should this be 200,000? So we got to remember when it's talking about Issachar in this passage, it's saying that he knows what Israel needs, and that the adjustment should have to take place accordingly. And so they might be from sons of Issachar, one's knowing of understanding to the times, to know of what he shall do Israel, heads of them 200s, and all of brothers of them on bidding of them. So how do we interpret that? Well, we could interpret that as taking this as heads of thousands and just calling this 200,000. So if we do this, again, we're not going to count the subset of Levi. We're not going to count Aaron twice. We're not going to count Zadok twice. We're not going to count the 1,000 with Naphtali. So instead we're just going to say Issachar is 200,000 right here. And so what is the total that you get when you do this? Well, we're going to add all of these together, and we're going to see that these total 535,900. And so how does that relate? This 535,900 right here. How does this relate to our first census numbers? Remember, these are our first census numbers. So 535,900. We'll see that this is twice this amount right here. So if we were to take 535,900 and divide it by 2, we see that this is the exact same amount. So this is going to be the same as the balance in this first census of the eagle and the ox together along with Levi. And that's going to be this value. So it's doubled. So obviously we see that dividing this by 233 again, we have that factor present, and it's 2,300 this time. So now we want to look and say, okay, well, what does that leave us off of what the total, our adjusted total is going to be in all of these other sets that we had found before. And we're going to see that difference happens to be this amount, 699. And we know that this is essentially going to be twice the value of Judah North. So remember that in this first census, when we found this quarter piece, we found that this Judah North protrusion, or the Judah South, was this ecliptic number. 39,650 that we found all this importance in. Well, in the Chronicles, when we get to this phase, it's this Judah North section, this 34,950, this other balance, this 699 times 50 number right here, that is the significant thing that's going to be relevant to the Chronicles. So we see that if we divide this number by 2, we get 34,950. So, and again, we're talking about, when we're talking about the numbers being rounded off at 1.1 million and 470,000, the ones that are taken, or what does it say, smited, or whatever, smoted, 70,000. Well, that would be the number that you would round this number to. So 69,900 would be rounded to 70,000. So all of those numbers seem to fit with this second census. Obviously, there's plenty to draw out because all of the different terms, there's different qualifiers for all of the numbers that are given. So it looks like you can group these differently. For instance, if you were to group Judah with Naphtali, 43,800, I don't know how that would fit in, but obviously there's going to be something to do with the grouping, because all of these are given different terms of how to group them together. But again, I'm just finding this yesterday. It was the first time I looked at the book of Chronicles and these other number sets. As in my research, I had to look at all the different ways in which these numbers are, these tribes are brought together with all of their numbers together. But just thought I would share that with everyone today. Hope you enjoy that. We'll talk to you later.